They say life can be stolen without touching your soul. I remember standing at the edge of my childhood, watching her smile while wearing everything that should have been mine. My parents' love, my identity, my dreams, all handed over to her. As if I never existed. I was the shadow behind her light, the silence beneath her laughter. But fate has a strange way of writing justice. It whispers quietly, waits patiently, and then strikes when you least expect it. This is the story of how everything I lost came back to me. Welcome to the Untold Love. If you're drawn to stories that touch the soul, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. I was born in a house that was filled with laughter, but somehow, none of it belonged to me. My earliest memories are not of being held tightly in my mother's arms or hearing my father call me his little girl. Instead, I remember watching from a corner as they poured all their warmth into her. She was not their daughter by blood, yet they gave her everything, every smile, every word of pride, every small joy that makes a child believe they matter. I grew up in the shadows of her brightness. When she ran into the room, their eyes lit up as if the sun itself had entered. And when I followed behind, it was as if I carried no light at all. She was dressed in ribbons, soft fabrics, and colors that sang. I was handed what was left behind. She was given praise for every step she took, while I struggled just to be noticed. Children don't understand why love is uneven. They only feel the ache of it. I would lie awake at night, asking myself silently, am I not enough? Why don't they look at me the way they look at her? The silence that followed those questions was heavier than words. I learned to smile through the emptiness, to clap for her victories even when they carved holes inside my heart. She was their chosen one. And I, though I never understood why, was the forgotten one. Sometimes, I tried to win their approval. I painted pictures, I sang softly to myself, I even memorized poems to recite for them. But my words would float past their ears unnoticed, while hers were met with applause, hugs, and gifts. It was as though I lived behind a glass wall, able to see love, but never to feel it. Yet, even as a child, a quiet strength was forming inside me. I became used to silence. I learned to hold my tears until no one could see. And in the stillness, I began to listen to my own heart. It whispered, one day, you will matter. One day, this emptiness will make sense. But as the years went on, that whisper grew fainter. The shadow I lived in became darker, and I started to believe what the world around me was showing me, that my life didn't belong to me. It belonged to her. My parents had given her everything that should have been mine, and I was left with nothing but silence. Little did I know, silence does not last forever. Growing up did not make things easier, it only made the silence heavier. Childhood's confusion turned into teenage loneliness, and the distance between me and my parents grew into a chasm I could never cross. By then, I had learned to stop expecting hugs, or warm words, or the pride that every daughter longs for. Instead, I watched quietly as she was celebrated for milestones that should have been shared by us both. She went to the best school, her uniforms always crisp and new. She returned home with certificates, medals, and shining report cards, each one framed on the wall with her name glowing in golden ink. And me? I went to schools that were good enough. My achievements were folded into drawers, forgotten like old letters. If I ever dared to ask why, I was met with tired excuses or worse, cold silence. I learned to disappear in plain sight. I would walk through the house like a ghost, carrying books pressed tightly against my chest. They became my escape. Between the pages, I found voices that spoke to me, stories that told me I wasn't worthless, characters who fought battles I could only dream of fighting. In the quiet corners of my room, I began to write, little scraps of poetry, secret diary entries, anything to remind myself that my heart still beat, even if no one seemed to hear it. But fate has a strange way of offering glimpses of light when the darkness feels endless. In those years, someone noticed me. A boy. Not the kind who dazzled the crowd, but the kind who noticed the small things, the way I carried sadness in my eyes, the way I tried to hide behind silence. He spoke. to me like I mattered, as if my words had weight. It felt strange, almost unreal, to be seen. And yet, even as my heart fluttered in this fragile discovery of attention, I couldn't fully accept it. Deep inside, a voice whispered, "You don't deserve this. She's the one they love. She's the one the world sees." That voice was cruel, but it was all I had ever known. The other girl, the golden one, never missed a chance to remind me of my place. Her laughter was sharp when she mocked me, her eyes glinting with triumph whenever I faltered. And still, my parents stood behind her, protecting her, lifting her higher. It was during those years I began to feel that my life was not mine at all, that everything I might have been was handed over to her before I even had a chance to try. But deep inside, something restless stirred. I didn't know it then, but life was preparing me. Preparing me for truths that would break me, and yet, also set me free. Love has a way of arriving quietly, like a soft breeze slipping through a locked window. For me, it came in the form of that boy who refused to let me disappear. While the world looked past me, his eyes lingered long enough to see me, not the shadow I had been forced to become, but the soul hidden beneath it. He would walk beside me after school, his steps never hurried, as though my silence didn't make him uncomfortable. When I spoke, he listened, not just to the words, but to the weight behind them. Sometimes, he would smile in the middle of my sentences, not because what I said was funny, but because he seemed to find beauty in the fact that I had spoken at all. For the first time, I felt like my voice mattered. Like maybe I mattered. We shared small secrets, the kind that teenagers guard with trembling hearts. He told me about his dreams, and I, shyly, revealed my love for writing. He said my words carried more honesty than anything he had ever read in books. I didn't believe him, of course, but I cherished the way he said it, like he meant it with every breath. But where there is light, there is always a shadow. She noticed him too. The golden girl, the one who had been given my life as if it were a gift meant only for her, did not like that someone's eyes were turning away from her and toward me. I saw the way she began to smile at him, the way she inserted herself into conversations, making me feel smaller all over again. And my parents, they noticed too. They told me quietly, but firmly, that he deserved someone better. Their eyes shifted toward her when they said it, as if the answer was obvious. My heart cracked under the weight of their words. Once again, love was being stolen from me, before it could even take root. But he didn't turn away. Not then. He continued to walk beside me, to remind me in small ways that I was not invisible. And those small gestures, an encouraging glance, a note passed with a simple line of kindness, a hand brushing mine in silence, became the sparks that lit fires in places I thought had long gone cold. It was fragile, uncertain, and easily broken. But it was love. My first taste of something that felt like it belonged to me. And yet, deep down, I knew the world around me would not let me hold on to it without a fight. The truth has a way of hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to tear everything apart. For years, I lived believing I was simply unloved, that perhaps I wasn't enough. But one evening, fate opened a door I was never meant to see. It happened in the quiet corner of our house, in an old drawer that rarely opened. I wasn't searching for secrets, just looking for a notebook I had misplaced. Instead, I found a folder thick with papers, brittle from time. At first, I thought they were meaningless documents. But as my eyes moved over the words, the world beneath me began to shift. There it was, my name. My birth certificate. My hospital records. All carrying the undeniable truth that I was their true daughter. And then, tucked between the files, letters exchanged between my parents and someone else, letters that explained why they had brought her into our lives. She was never their blood. Never their child. She was taken in, pitted, and then cherished. So completely that somewhere along the way, they forgot me. They gave her my place, my identity, my everything. My hands trembled as I read those words. Anger, confusion, betrayal, all of it crashed into me at once. How could they? How could the people who brought me into this world give away my life so easily, as if it were something they could trade? When I confronted them, the silence was louder than any answer. My mother's eyes dropped to the floor. My father's lips tightened. Their silence was not denial, it was guilt. And guilt, I realized, was the cruelest truth of all. I ran from the room, heart pounding, tears burning down my face. For so long, I had believed I was unloved because I was flawed. But now I saw. It wasn't my fault at all. It was their choice. Their decision. They had chosen her over me, not because I lacked something, but because they gave away what was mine. And in that storm of despair, he found me. The boy who had become my only light. He listened as I poured out the truth, my voice breaking under the weight of it. And then he said words I never thought I would hear: "You are not invisible anymore." Those words wrapped around me like a lifeline. For the first time, I felt the beginnings of something I had been denied my whole life: validation. But deep inside, I knew this truth was only the beginning. Fate had shown its hand, and everything was about to change. The days after the truth came out were like walking through a battlefield. Every corner of the house echoed with unspoken tension, every glance carried more weight than words. She, the girl who had lived my life, looked at me not with guilt, but with fury. It was as though my very existence threatened to take away everything she had built her identity upon. She lashed out in ways only she knew how. Whispers behind my back, lies spun so delicately that even I began to doubt myself. She painted me as jealous, ungrateful, a troublemaker trying to tear the family apart. And the worst part? My parents, still blinded by years of misplaced affection, stood by her. Their silence was once again her shield, and I was left to carry the weight of their disbelief. The boy, the only one who truly saw me, remained at my side. But even his presence couldn't erase the ache of watching my family choose her over and over again, even after the truth was revealed. I wanted to scream, to demand justice, but all I could do was watch the storm unfold, powerless to calm it. There were nights I almost gave up. Nights I sat by my window, tears soaking into the pages of my journal, convincing myself that maybe it wasn't worth it. Maybe I should let go of the fight, let her keep the life that was handed to her, and simply fade away like I had always done. But he wouldn't let me. One evening, when I broke down in front of him, confessing that I was too tired to fight anymore, he took my hands in his and whispered, "Don't let them steal you twice. They already took your childhood. Don't let them take your future too." His words pierced through the fog of my despair. For the first time, I realized that fighting wasn't about winning their love, it was about reclaiming myself. About proving that I was more than the silence they forced me into. The storm raged on accusations, confrontations, bitter tears, but something inside me had shifted. I no longer begged for their love. I no longer needed their approval. I was standing, for the first time, not as a shadow, but as myself. And as the storm built to its fiercest point, I began to sense that peace was near. Not because they would finally give me what I deserved, but because I was finally ready to take it. Fate has a way of waiting until the last possible moment, letting the storm rage, letting hearts break, before it begins to reveal its mercy. After weeks of tension, silence, and bitterness, the truth could no longer be buried. No matter how much she tried to twist the story, no matter how many lies she spun, the weight of reality pressed too heavily on my parents. They could no longer run from what was written in blood and paper. I remember the night it finally broke. My father's voice cracked as he admitted it. Yes, I was their daughter. Yes, they had given my life away to her. My mother's tears fell freely, but they did not wash away the years of absence, of silence, of being invisible. Regret had finally arrived, but it came far too late to mend the scars. And yet, hearing them speak the truth aloud was like breathing after drowning. For the first time, the silence I had lived in all my life shattered. They could no longer pretend. They could no longer deny me. She, my so-called sister, my shadow, my rival, stood frozen. Without the illusion of being their chosen child, she was no longer untouchable. She tried to fight, to cling to what she had built, but it slipped away like sand between her fingers. Her downfall didn't bring me triumph, it brought me emptiness. Because I realized then, I was never truly fighting her. I was fighting for myself. Through it all, he stood beside me. The boy who had seen me before anyone else did. In the middle of the chaos, he took my hand and asked me not to let go, not of him, not of the life we could build together. And in his eyes, I saw something my parents had never given me, certainty. The proposal wasn't grand, not dressed in gold or diamonds. It was simple, quiet, honest, spoken in a trembling voice that carried more truth than any promise ever could. And for the first time, I said yes, not just to him, but to myself. Yes, I deserved love. Yes, I deserved life. Yes, I was no longer invisible. Fate did not return everything by restoring the past, it gave me something greater. It gave me dignity, strength, and a future no one could take away. I had entered this world as their daughter, but I stepped into my own life as something more, a woman who had reclaimed her name, her voice, and her love. They say closure comes when the heart finally stops asking why. For years, I lived with questions that burned holes in me. Why wasn't I enough? Why did they give away my life? Why did silence become my only inheritance? But now, after all the storms, the answers no longer mattered. What mattered was that I had survived. I had found myself in the ruins they left behind. My parents eventually tried to mend the brokenness. They offered apologies stitched with regret, but regret cannot rewrite childhood. It cannot erase the countless nights when I lay awake, wondering if I even belonged. I accepted their remorse, but I did not let it bind me anymore. Forgiveness, I realized, was not for them, it was for me. Because carrying bitterness would only chain me to the same silence I had spent my whole life escaping. As for her, the girl who once lived my life, she drifted into her own shadows. She had built herself on borrowed love, and when it was gone, she was left empty. I did not hate her. I pitied her. Because in the end, she never truly belonged, and she knew it. Fate had taken back what it had lent her, and she was left with nothing but the memory of a throne that was never hers. But me? I finally began to breathe freely. No longer the invisible daughter. No longer the shadow. I walked into a life that was mine, with love that was chosen, not forced. The boy, my boy, became the man who stood by every scar, every fracture of my soul, and promised me that brokenness could still be beautiful. With him, I built a new home, not out of perfection, but out of truth. And one morning, as I watched the sunrise paint the sky in gold, I realized something powerful. Fate had not just returned everything to me, it had given me more than I had ever imagined. My childhood had been stolen, yes. My voice had been silenced. My identity had been buried. But through that pain, I discovered strength I didn't know I had. I was no longer the forgotten child. I was a woman who had reclaimed her life. And maybe that is the greatest justice of all, not revenge, not triumph over those who hurt us, but the quiet victory of becoming everything they told us we could never be. So when people ask me if fate truly returned what was mine, I smile softly and say, it gave me more. It gave me myself.